Marriage is like a hardware store after closing time. Everything looks normal from the outside, but inside, the inventory's been rearranged by thieves. My name is Jack Malloy, and I've been running Malloy Hardware in this god-forsaken corner of Maine for 15 years. 15 years of selling screws to people who've been screwing me behind my back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was a Tuesday night in October when I first smelled the lye on my wife's skin. Elise came home at 11:30, claiming she'd been showing the Morrison place to some couple from Boston. Real estate, she said, was all about timing and availability. Funny thing about timing, it has a way of revealing truths you'd rather not know. How'd it go? I asked from the kitchen table, where I'd been nursing a beer and pretending to read the local paper, the Millfield Gazette, where the biggest scandal usually involved someone's prize-winning tomatoes. Oh, you know how it is, Elise said, not meeting my eyes. She was already heading for the stairs, one hand smoothing down her blonde hair. Buyers these days want everything perfect. Took forever to explain the heating system. I nodded, watching her climb those creaky steps we'd been meaning to fix for 3 years. Her blouse was wrinkled in a way that suggested it had been removed and hastily put back on. The perfume was wrong too. Something expensive and cloying that definitely wasn't the vanilla stuff she usually wore. But what really got my attention was what she wasn't wearing. The silver bracelet I'd given her for our 10th anniversary last month. She never took that thing off. Never. I finished my beer and followed her upstairs, my carpenter's instincts already cataloging the evidence. The bathroom door was closed, and I could hear water running. When she finally emerged, her makeup was fresh and her hair was damp at the temples. "Long day," she said, sliding into bed beside me. "Yeah," I replied. "Must have been." The next morning, I borrowed Mike Travers' pickup truck. Mike was my best friend since high school, ran the Ford dealership on Route 9, and always let me use his vehicles when I needed to haul something heavy for the store. He was also married to Tina, a sharp-tongued woman, who made the best apple pie in 3 counties and had a talent for seeing through people's lies. I was loading lumber into the truck bed when I saw it. A small piece of black lace caught on the edge of the tailgate. I recognized it immediately. Elise's underwear, the expensive set she'd bought for our anniversary dinner. Standing there in the morning sun, holding that scrap of fabric, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. More like the satisfaction of finally understanding why a joint won't fit properly. You've been measuring wrong the whole time.
And I gutted the evidence and drove back to the store, my mind already working through the implications. Elise and Mike and Elise. It made a sick kind of sense.
He'd been coming around more often lately, always with some excuse about needing this tool or that piece of hardware. Always asking about Elise, how she was doing, whether she was happy.
Randy Peterson was stocking shelves when I got back.
Randy was my only full-time employee, a good kid in his 20s who could lift twice his weight and had the loyalty of a golden retriever. He looked up when I walked in, probably noticing something in my expression. "Everything okay, boss?" "Just peachy," I said. "Randy, you know anything about birth control pills?" He turned red as a stop sign. What kind of question is that?" "The kind that might save a man's life," I said, "or ruin someone else's." That afternoon, I made a trip to the pharmacy in the next town over. Amazing what you can learn from a helpful pharmacist when you spin the right story about your wife's forgetfulness and your concern for her health. Even more amazing what you can accomplish with a small screwdriver and 5 minutes alone with someone's medicine cabinet. I replaced Elise's birth control pills with prenatal vitamins. Same size, same color. Close enough to fool someone who wasn't paying attention. If she was going to play games, I figured I might as well change the rules. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd had a vasectomy 3 years ago, after we'd decided we didn't want children. Elise had been relieved, said it would be better for her career. Now that little snip might turn out to be the best investment I'd ever made. That night, I pretended to sleep while Elise texted someone in the bathroom. The light from her phone screen leaked under the door, and I could hear the soft tapping of her fingers on the screen. When she finally came back to bed, I waited until her breathing evened out, then slipped into the bathroom myself. She'd left her phone on the counter, still logged into her messages. I didn't even have to try to snoop. The conversation with Mike was right there on the screen. "Can't wait to see you again," his last message read, followed by a kiss emoji. Her reply: tomorrow night. Jack's got inventory at the store until late. I smiled in the darkness of our bathroom, looking at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. 15 years of marriage, and I was finally seeing my wife clearly. She thought she was so clever, so careful, but she'd forgotten one important thing about hardware. Every tool has a purpose, and every purpose has a tool. I was about to become very good at using both. The thing about running a hardware store in a small town is that you hear everything. People come in to buy a wrench. They end up telling you about their neighbor's divorce. They need sandpaper. They share gossip about who's sleeping with whom. It's better than social media and twice as reliable. My sister Sherry stopped by on Thursday morning with coffee and donuts from her bakery. Sherry was 2 years younger than me, with the same dark hair and stubborn streak that ran in the Malloy family. She also had an ear for gossip that could put the FBI to shame. "You look terrible," she said, setting a chocolate glazed on the counter next to my register. "Thanks. You always know just what to say to brighten a man's day." She studied my face with the intensity of someone examining a cracked foundation. "What's going on, Jack? And don't tell me it's nothing. I've seen roadkill with more life in its eyes." I took a bite of the donut, considering how much to tell her. Sherry was loyal to a fault, but she was also incapable of keeping a secret if she thought someone was being wronged. "Hypothetically," I said, "if someone's spouse was cheating on them, what would you do?" Hypothetically, I'd make sure the whole town knew what a piece of garbage the cheater was. But we're not talking hypothetically, are we? Before I could answer, Randy came in from the back room carrying a box of electrical supplies. He nodded to Sherry, then looked at me with concern. "Boss, you want me to handle the morning customers? You seem a little distracted." "I'm fine," I said, "just thinking through some problems." "What kind of problems?" Sherry asked. I glanced around the empty store, then made a decision. The kind that require careful planning and perfect timing. Over the next hour, I told them everything. The late nights, the perfume, the underwear in Mike's truck, the text messages. By the time I finished, Sherry was pacing behind the counter like a caged animal, and Randy was clenching his fists. "That lying witch," Sherry said, "and Mike Travers. I always knew there was something slimy about him." "What are you going to do?" Randy asked. "I'm going to be very, very careful," I said, "and I'm going to need your help." The plan started simple. Randy would do some casual surveillance. Mike's dealership was visible from the diner across the street, and Randy ate lunch there most days anyway. Sherry would keep her ears open for any gossip about Elise's real estate showings, and I would document everything. I bought a small digital camera and started following my own wife. It felt pathetic and necessary at the same time, like taking medicine that tastes awful but might save your life. Wednesday afternoon, I tailed Elise to what she claimed was a property showing on Elm Street. Instead of the house she'd mentioned, she drove to Mike's place, a showy colonial with more square footage than taste. I parked down the street and waited. They weren't even trying to be subtle. Through the living room window, I could see them on his couch, her hands in his hair, his mouth on her neck. I took pictures until my camera's memory was full, then sat there watching my marriage dissolve in real time. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how happy she looked. Happier than I'd seen her in years. Whatever Mike was giving her, it was something I'd apparently stopped providing a long time ago. I drove back to the store, feeling like I'd been gutted with a rusty blade. "How bad?" Randy asked when he saw my face. "Bad enough," I said. "Your turn. What did you see at the dealership?" "Mike left early 3 times this week. Always around 2 o'clock. Always dressed up nice. And get this. Tina came by looking for him yesterday. She seemed pretty upset when his secretary said he was out with a client." "That was interesting." Tina Travers wasn't the type to be fooled easily. If she was getting suspicious, it meant Mike was getting careless. Friday morning brought the first real break. Sherry called while I was opening the store, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "Jack, you need to hear this." I was at the post office, and Betty Morrison was there picking up her mail. "You remember the Morrison place, the house Elise claimed she was showing?" "Yeah? It's been sold for 2 months, closed in August. There haven't been any showings since July." I felt that cold satisfaction again, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "Any other lies you've uncovered?" "Oh, I'm just getting started. I called 3 of the properties Elise claimed to show in the past month. 2 of them are off the market, and 1 of them doesn't even exist. She's been lying about everything, Jack." "Good work, detective. There's more. I ran into Tina at the grocery store yesterday. She's definitely suspicious. Asked me if I'd seen Mike around town during the day. Said he's been coming home late and acting strange. I didn't say anything, but she's putting pieces together on her own. That afternoon, I made another decision that would have seemed impossible a week earlier. I drove to Tina's house. Tina answered the door looking tired and frustrated. She was a handsome woman in her 40s, with graying brown hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Jack, what brings you by?" "I was wondering if I could borrow Mike's truck again," I said. "Got a delivery coming in that won't fit in my pickup." "He's not here," she said. "Out with another client." The way she said it made it clear she didn't believe her own words. "Everything okay, Tina?" She studied my face for a long moment, and I could see her weighing how much to say. "Can I ask you something, Jack? Has Elise been acting strange lately?" "Strange how?" "I don't know. Different. Happier, maybe? Like she's got a secret?" I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at jagged rocks. One wrong word and everything would come crashing down before I was ready. "Now that you mention it," I said carefully, "she has been working a lot of late nights lately. Real estate, you know how it is." Tina nodded, but her expression suggested she knew exactly how it was, and it wasn't real estate. "If you ever need to talk," I said, "you know where to find me." "Thanks, Jack. Same to you." I drove home that evening with a new understanding of the situation. I wasn't the only victim here. Tina was being lied to just as much as I was, and she deserved to know the truth. But timing was everything. If I moved too fast, Elise and Mike would just find a way to cover their tracks and make me look like a paranoid husband. No, this required patience and planning and a level of calculation that would have scared me a week ago. That night, while Elise was in the shower, I went through her purse and found a receipt from a motel out on Route 1. The date matched one of her supposed evening showings. The timestamp was 3:47 p.m., checkout time. I photographed the receipt, put it back exactly where I'd found it, and went to bed with a smile on my face. Let them think they were being clever. Every lie was another nail in their coffin, and I was just getting started building it. October in Maine has a way of stripping things down to their bare bones. The leaves fall, the tourists go home, and what's left is the truth of a place, cold, hard, and impossible to ignore. By the third week of the month, I had enough evidence to bury both Elise and Mike 6 feet deep in their own lies. The pregnancy test showed up on a Tuesday. I found it in the bathroom trash, wrapped in tissue paper like some kind of guilty secret. 2 pink lines, clear as day, positive. I stared at that little plastic stick and felt something between laughter and nausea. 3 years since my vasectomy. 3 years since we'd decided children weren't in our future. And now Elise was pregnant with another man's baby. I rewrapped the test, put it back in the trash, and went downstairs to make coffee. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. Funny how clarity can feel like peace, even when your world is burning down around you. "Morning, honey," Elise said when she came down 20 minutes later. She was glowing, literally glowing with that radiance pregnant women get. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't built on lies. "Morning," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby," she said, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing at the irony. She poured herself coffee, then immediately made a face and poured it down the sink. "Ugh, tastes terrible today." "Maybe you're coming down with something," I suggested. "Maybe." She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl instead. "I've got 3 showings today, so I'll be late again." "Of course you will." At the store, I called Randy and Sherry for an emergency meeting. They arrived within 10 minutes, Randy with paint under his fingernails and Sherry with flour in her hair. "What's the crisis?" Sherry asked. "Elise is pregnant." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "Holy crap," Randy finally said. "That's one way to put it," I agreed. Sherry was doing math in her head, her face cycling through confusion, understanding, and finally rage. "That cheating, lying." "Careful," I said. "We're in public." "Well, what are you going to do?" Randy asked. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve," I said. "But first, I need to know something. The county fair is this weekend, right?" "Yeah," Sherry said slowly. "Why?" "Because I think it's time for some public education." The Millfield County Fair was the biggest event of the year, drawing people from 5 towns over for 3 days of rides, games, and competitions. The pie contest was always held on Saturday afternoon, with half the town gathered around the main pavilion to watch the judging. It was the perfect stage for what I had in mind. I spent the rest of the week preparing, made copies of photographs, printed out text message conversations, Organized receipts and timelines. Everything documented. Everything provable. I also made some phone calls to Mike's boss at the dealership, to the head of Elise's real estate agency, to both sets of parents. I didn't say anything incriminating, just casual inquiries about family gatherings, holiday plans, that sort of thing. Planting seeds for later. Saturday arrived gray and cold, with the smell of fried dough and diesel fuel from the carnival rides. Elise had entered her apple cinnamon pie in the contest, same as she did every year. She never won. Tina Travers took first place 5 years running, but she kept trying. I found Mike by the beer tent, laughing with a group of guys from the volunteer fire department. He looked relaxed and happy, like a man without a care in the world. That was about to change. "Mike!" I called out, walking over with a big smile on my face. Just the man I wanted to see. "Hey, Jack! How's it going?" "Great, really great. In fact, I've got some news I think you'll find interesting." The other men were listening now, sensing drama in the air the way dogs sense storms. "Elise is pregnant," I announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mike's face went through several color changes, red to white to green, and back to red. That's great, Jack. Congratulations." "Thanks, we're thrilled. It's funny though, the doctor says she's about 6 weeks along." 6 weeks? Can you believe that? I could see him trying to do the math, trying to figure out if there was any way this could work in his favor. But 6 weeks ago was when Randy had first spotted him leaving the dealership for his afternoon appointments. "The really amazing part," I continued, "is that this is a genuine miracle baby. See, I had a vasectomy 3 years ago, complete procedure, very thorough. The doctor said there was virtually no chance of natural conception." The silence around the beer tent was deafening. Mike looked like he was going to be sick. "But miracles happen, right?" I said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Life finds a way." I left him standing there and walked toward the pie contest pavilion, where a crowd was already gathering. Tina was there with her prize-winning apple pie, chatting with the other contestants. Elise stood nearby, looking nervous but excited. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer called out, "if we could have all the pie contestants and their families come forward for the judging." I walked up to stand beside Elise, putting my arm around her waist. She leaned into me, probably thinking I was being supportive. "Before we start," I said to the crowd, "I'd like to share some exciting news. My wife Elise and I are expecting our first child." The crowd erupted in applause and congratulations. Elise smiled and waved, basking in the attention. "It's particularly special," I continued, "because it's what you might call a miracle baby. You see, I had a vasectomy 3 years ago, so this pregnancy is quite unexpected." The applause died away as people began to understand what I was really saying. Elise's smile froze on her face. "In fact," I said, pulling out my phone, "I've been doing some research into how these miracles happen. Turns out there are usually other factors involved." I held up my phone, showing one of the photographs I'd taken of Elise and Mike together. The crowd pressed closer, squinting at the screen. "For instance," I said, "sometimes wives find inspiration in unexpected places, like their husband's best friend's living room." Tina Travers pushed through the crowd, her face white with fury. She looked at the photo, then at Elise, then at Mike, who had just arrived at the pavilion, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "You piece of garbage," Tina said, but I wasn't sure if she was talking to Mike or Elise, maybe both. Now, I said calmly, "let's not jump to conclusions. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for why my wife has been spending her afternoons at Mike's house while he's supposed to be selling cars." Elise tried to speak, but no words came out. She looked around at the crowd of neighbors and friends, all staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to pity. "The really interesting part," I continued, "is the timeline. See, I've been tracking Elise's supposed work appointments for the past month. Amazing how many properties she's been showing that don't actually exist." I pulled out a folder and began reading from my notes. October 3rd, showing the Morrison Place. Except the Morrison Place sold in August. October 8th, evening appointment on Birch Street. Except there is no Birch Street in Millfield. October 12th, stop, Elise whispered. "I'm sorry, honey, I didn't hear you." "Stop," she said louder. "Stop what? Stop telling the truth? Stop sharing our good news with our friends and neighbors? Stop celebrating this miracle baby that definitely, absolutely cannot be mine?" Tina stepped forward and slapped Mike across the face so hard the sound echoed across the pavilion. Then she turned to Elise. How long? She demanded. Tina, I can explain, Mike started. Not you, Tina snapped. Her. How long have you been sleeping with my husband? Elise looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. But we were surrounded by half the town, and every face was hostile. It's not what you think, she finally managed. Really? I said. Because I think it's exactly what it looks like. I think my wife has been having an affair with my best friend. I think she's pregnant with his baby. And I think both of them have been lying to us for months. The crowd was murmuring now, the gossip spreading like wildfire. I could see people pulling out their phones, taking pictures, recording videos. By tonight, this would be all over social media. By tomorrow, it would be the only thing anyone in town was talking about. Jack, Mike said, stepping forward with his hands raised. Let's talk about this privately. Privately? I laughed. Like you and my wife have been talking privately? No, I think we've had enough private conversations. I think it's time for some public honesty. I pulled out my phone again and showed the crowd another photo. This one of Mike and Elise kissing in his truck outside the motel on Route 1. This was taken last Thursday, I said. The same day Elise told me she was showing a house to clients from Boston. Funny how that house turned out to be a motel room. Tina made a sound like a wounded animal. She grabbed the phone from my hand and stared at the photo, her face crumpling. 15 years, she whispered. 15 years of marriage, and this is what I get. She threw the phone back at me and walked away, pushing through the crowd. Mike started to follow her, but I caught his arm. I wouldn't, I said quietly. You've done enough damage for one day. He jerked away from me and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Elise standing alone in the center of the pavilion. She looked around at the hostile faces, then at me. How could you do this to me? She asked. Do what? Tell the truth? Share our happy news? I thought you'd be proud of your miracle baby. You're destroying my life. No, I said. I'm just revealing the life you chose to live. There's a difference. She turned and ran, pushing through the crowd toward the parking lot. I let her go. She had nowhere to run that the truth wouldn't follow. The pie contest was canceled. People drifted away in small groups, already dissecting what they'd witnessed. I stood in the empty pavilion, surrounded by abandoned pies and folding chairs, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Sunday morning came with the kind of silence that follows explosions. My phone had been ringing since dawn. Reporters from the county paper, distant relatives who'd heard the gossip, old friends calling to offer support or ask for details. I turned it off and made coffee in the blessed quiet of my kitchen. Elise hadn't come home Saturday night. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and her side of the bed was still made from yesterday morning. I wondered where she'd gone, then realized I didn't particularly care. Randy showed up around 9 with donuts and a grim expression. How you holding up, boss? Better than expected, I said, pouring him coffee. You? Been fielding calls all morning. Half the town wants to buy you a drink, the other half thinks you went too far. And what do you think? Randy considered this while biting into a maple bar. I think they had it coming. But I also think you better watch your back. Cornered animals do stupid things. He was right, of course. I'd humiliated both Elise and Mike in front of the entire town, destroyed their reputations, and probably cost them their livelihoods. People in that position tend to lash out. I didn't have to wait long to find out how. Monday morning, I arrived at the store to find my front window smashed. Someone had thrown a brick through the glass, along with a note that read, "Mind your own business," in block letters. The handwriting looked like Mike's, but I couldn't prove it. I called the police and filed a report, then spent the morning boarding up the window and calling the insurance company. Detective Leah Boyd showed up around noon to take pictures and ask questions. Leah was a classmate of mine from high school, a smart woman who joined the force after college and worked her way up through competence and stubbornness. She had short gray hair and tired eyes that saw everything. So, she said, examining the brick and note, any idea who might have done this? Could be anyone, I said. Small town, big gossip, people take sides. Uh-huh. And this wouldn't have anything to do with your very public announcement at the county fair? Can't imagine why it would. She gave me a look that suggested she wasn't buying my innocent act. Jack, I've known you since we were kids. You're not usually the type for public drama. People change. Yeah, they do. The question is, how much are you planning to change? Because if this escalates, someone's going to get hurt. I'm not planning anything, I said. I'm just living my life and telling the truth when people ask. Right. Well, Try to keep the truth-telling to a minimum, okay? At least until things cool down. She left, and I went back to cleaning up glass. But Randy was right. I needed to watch my back. That afternoon, Mike proved just how right he was. I was in the back room doing inventory when I heard the bell over the front door chime. I came out to find Mike standing by the register, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said. "I'm listening." "Not here, outside." I followed him into the alley behind the store, my hand resting on the hammer hanging from my belt. Mike was bigger than me, younger, and probably desperate enough to do something stupid. "You ruined my life," he said, without preamble. I told the truth. "If that ruined your life, maybe you should have thought about that before you started lying." Tina threw me out. "My boss is reviewing my position at the dealership. Half the town won't even look at me." Sounds like consequences. He stepped closer, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're so smart, don't you? So righteous, but you don't know everything." "I know enough. Do you know Elise was planning to leave you anyway? Do you know she was going to file for divorce next month? Do you know she's been laughing about what a pathetic loser you are?" The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. If she was planning to leave, why didn't she? Because I told her to wait. I told her we needed to be careful, do things the right way. I was trying to protect everyone. By sneaking around and lying? By not humiliating you in public like you did to us? I pulled the hammer from my belt and hefted it thoughtfully. Mike took a step back. "Here's the thing, Mike," I said calmly. "You're standing in my alley, threatening me, after you spent months lying to my face and sleeping with my wife. Now you want me to feel sorry for you, because there are consequences to your actions." "Jack, I'm not finished." I took a step toward him. "You want to know what I think? I think you're a coward who couldn't even cheat honestly. You snuck around like a teenager, made my wife lie for you, and now you're whining because the truth came out. You had no right. I had every right. She's my wife. Was my wife. And you were supposed to be my friend." Mike's face was red with anger and embarrassment. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You're going to walk away now, and you're going to stay away from me, my store, and my family. Because if you don't, I'll make what happened at the fair look like a friendly conversation." I raised the hammer slightly, not threatening, just reminding him it was there. Mike stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. I watched him go, then went back inside and called Sherry. "I need you to spread some gossip," I said. "What kind of gossip?" "The kind that makes Mike Travers unemployable in this town." That evening, I drove past Mike's house and wasn't surprised to see his prized Mustang parked in the driveway. It was a 1967 Fastback, cherry red with racing stripes, his pride and joy. He'd spent more on that car than most people spent on their houses. I didn't touch it that night, but I made note of where it was parked and how well lit the street was. Information for later, if needed. Tuesday brought more fallout. Elise finally came home, looking haggard and defeated. She'd been staying at a motel in the next town over, she said, trying to figure out what to do next. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening. I want a divorce." "Okay." She seemed surprised by my calm response. "Okay? That's it? What did you expect? Begging? Tears? You're pregnant with another man's baby, Elise. Did you think I'd fight to keep you?" I don't know what I thought. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You can file for divorce, but you're not getting half of everything. The store is mine, the house is mine, and I'm not paying support for a child that isn't mine." "You can't do that. Watch me. I've already talked to a lawyer. Adultery changes things, especially when it's documented as thoroughly as yours is." Her face went pale. "What do you mean, documented?" I showed her the folder I'd compiled. Photographs, receipts, text message printouts, witness statements. Months of evidence, all organized and indexed. "You've been watching me. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." She flipped through the folder with shaking hands. This is stalking. This is marriage to a liar. If you'd been honest from the beginning, none of this would have been necessary." "I made a mistake." "You made dozens of mistakes. For months. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, Elise. This was a calculated betrayal." She closed the folder and set it on the kitchen table. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I want you to take your things and go live your new life with your new family. Just don't expect me to pay for it." She went upstairs to pack, and I sat in the kitchen listening to drawers opening and closing, hangers scraping in the closet, the sounds of a marriage ending. It should have been sadder than it was. Wednesday morning brought news that Mike's Mustang had been vandalized. Someone had poured paint stripper over the hood and slashed all 4 tires. The damage was extensive, thousands of dollars worth. I was at the hardware store when Detective Boyd came by to ask about it. Funny thing, she said. Mike seems to think you might know something about what happened to his car. Why would I know anything about that? Because paint stripper is the kind of thing someone might buy at a hardware store. We sell a lot of paint stripper. It's a popular item. I'm sure it is. You wouldn't happen to have any security cameras in your parking lot, would you? Afraid not. Budget's been tight. She nodded thoughtfully. Jack, I'm going to give you some advice. Whatever game you're playing, be careful it doesn't get out of hand. I'm not playing any games. Right. Well, if that changes, remember that vandalism is still a crime, even when the victim is a cheating husband. After she left, Randy came out of the back room grinning. Think she suspects anything? Probably, but suspecting and proving are 2 different things. Good thing we wore gloves. Good thing we did. That afternoon, Sherry called with an update on the gossip campaign. It's working, she said. Mike's boss got 3 anonymous tips about him using company vehicles for personal business. His secretary confirmed he's been lying about client meetings. Word is they're going to fire him by